Star Trek. How exciting to have representatives from all 4 series. We're double dipping with Michael Dorn a bit because he's been in Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. But to be up here with these fine folks, it really makes me want to take America and get us to the place that Gene Roddenberry imagined for the future. And these folks are the faces of the future. They represented a future for all of us that we've seen for 50 years in Star Trek and Star Trek storytelling. One of the things that I love about Star Trek is the mythology and the mythology building. It's such an intricate web that Gene Roddenberry created that it's very exciting for me to ask William Shatner, how important is Star Trek canon? How important is the mythology to you?
The canon, well, when you load it with a ball and you put a... the canon, you mean all the things that we have heard that Star Trek does, non-interference, that kind of...
Yes.
How important is it? It's essential. It is the basis of law and order. It's the basis of civilization.
It is. So, in canon, if we were to undo Kirk's death, I'm just asking for scientific purposes. If we were to undo Kirk's death...
Undo Kirk's death.
If it didn't happen, say in a magical world and it didn't happen...
Yes.
Wouldn't it be wonderful to continue telling stories about Captain Kirk with you in that role?
Hell yes!
You heard it from the man. Hell yes. So, Brent, one of the greatest episodes and the earliest episodes of The Next Generation was Measure of a Man.
Yeah.
It was all about human and individual rights. And identity is such a fantastic aspect of Data's character. And we're in a place now in the country where identity is under attack, where individual rights are under attack. What do you think Lieutenant Commander Data would feel about where we are now, and how can we get to where we need to go?
Well, I think, first, could you ask Bill to stop looking at me? There. All right. You know, absolutely, Brian. It's such a big subject. I really wish I could. Can you all leave? Yeah. And I can just...
yeah.
No, but I think Star Trek in general has been about individual rights and has been about...
You.
Yes, me. No, about respecting everyone, no matter who or what they are. And we're living in a world right now where that sort of respect is being challenged, not just all over the world, but in our country, too. And it's disturbing. And I think a lot of our politicians and a lot of our fellow citizens could take a page from Star Trek at this point and have a bit more respect for humanity, for all of us.
Jeri, as 7 of 9, you struggled with your own identity and identity issues and issues of individualism. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I absolutely think, I agree with everything you just said, but I think, I will say one thing for the Borg. Villains though they may be, they absolutely respected every species and, I mean, you know, assimilated and took the best of aspect of every species, but they certainly weren't exclusionary.
They were not.
And, you know, 7 was put in a unique situation, a unique position, because her personal choice and rights were taken away from her not once but twice. They were taken away when she was assimilated by the Borg as a child, and then they were taken away again by Captain Janeway when she was forcibly separated from the Borg, which was another decision that was made for her that she didn't choose. So I think 7 sort of experienced that and struggled with that on a very personal level.
Individuality is very important for all of us, and it must be celebrated whenever we can celebrate it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Michael, Boy, you've done a lot of Star Trek. A lot of wonderful Star Trek. And one of the wonderful things about the original series is seeing a bridge crew that united so many different types of people on the Enterprise. With the Next Generation, we had seen Worf as a Klingon introduced to a Starfleet bridge. He was the first of his kind. Star Trek is about celebrating diversity. It's infinite diversity and infinite combinations. How does it feel to be the first Klingon in Starfleet, and what can you say about the importance of diversity in our teams that we build today?
Well, it was an honor because I was a fan of the original show, and my brother and I watched it, and we loved the Klingons, and we thought they were great characters, and I thought that I didn't really put that much thought into what it meant, but I did know that the thought that Gene Roddenberry had was that he wanted to show that we have moved on, that the characters have evolved, that things are different. They're not the way it was before. And part of that is part of our country. At the time before that, the Berlin Wall came down, and the Russians weren't our enemies anymore, and people were caught by surprise. And so I thought that, along with being a great character that I was handed, was that he represented what the starship, you're going out in space, and we all respect each other, but there's a lot of guys that don't like Klingons still. And so there was still that bit of, well, we accept all races except Klingons, And so it gave everybody, I like to think it gave everybody a chance for the character to look at the crew, and the crew to look at him, and become very close, as they did over the years, which was really great. They learned a lot about each other, and it was one of the wonderful things about playing the character from Next Generation and Deep Space, was that the guy could grow, and he really changed over the years, especially in Deep Space. He really became a more than a two-dimensional or three-dimensional character. So it was fantastic.
And the heritage and the culture of the Klingons was fascinating. And so much today we're afraid of people who are so different than us. And it feels like a great statement that Gene Roddenberry was always trying to make with how we need, first and foremost, to get along as a species.
Well, interestingly enough, from the original series, the guys were just kind of wild and running around like crazy. And with The Undiscovered Country, which really showed them in a very Shakespearean way. They quoted Shakespeare, and they were very eloquent. And the thing with people ask me all the time is that, did you have a lot to do with the writing? And I said, not at all. I originated the character, but the writers took it off into this world where the Klingons were this rich culture that we thought were one-dimensional, just wanted to kill, just wanted to conquer. And they're not. And that is a good lesson for our times. We look at people from different worlds from a window of one dimension, And if you go in there, I love this line from Sting where he says, the Russians love their kids as much as we do. And that is really important. These are, if you have a chance, people are just not one-dimensional.
Well, you said something very interesting, because I remember the episode where Picard was being tortured by the Cardassians, and the Cardassians said about humans, they don't love their children like we love our children. And it's so easy to alienate something that is different than us, and it's a trap that we all fall into, and Star Trek is a warning to us about how we can be one. And that's the most beautiful message of Star Trek. Captain Archer, Mr. Scott Bakula, the first in the timeline to captain the Enterprise. And we know that starships are not built with cynicism. They're not built with fear-based hate. They're built with science. And one of the most beautiful things about science is that scientists know they have to collaborate. Scientists know they know everything about what they know, and they know that others know everything about what they know, and only working together can they find a better future. How does it feel to be the first captain of the Enterprise and know where we are now and where we need to go?
Oh, that's an easy one. I'm still stuck on tortured by the Kardashians.
Still stuck on that.
Look, being the first captain, that's what sold me on being in this franchise and being a part of this world when it was pitched to me that way. Because I knew that I could never follow all of these folks and all of the other captains. So it was an out for me to be first, because I could just say, well, I can't do anything wrong because Bill won't know what I'm doing. But science fiction has always fascinated me because of not just the science, but the nature of the optimism that goes with the science. So you take the science and the fiction and you create this optimism that somehow we're going to figure it out, that somehow we're going to continue on, that somehow we'll be here in the future, that somehow we'll take care of our planet, that somehow we'll realize that there aren't borders, that we're all one unit, unified species, regardless of religion and color and all the other things that we have thrown up in the middle of us, and take care of each other and take care of the place we live on and this planet. And so I tend to be an optimistic person in real life, and I have been and continue to be hopeful and positive that somehow, even when it's dark and some things are presented to us that seem completely impossible, that we as a species will figure it out. The scientists help us, and the dreamers help us, and what we do in our world and as actors and what you do in your lives helps all of us. And that's the joy of getting to be an actor and then getting to be in a place like this, which is unbelievable to be here today, 51 years after that guy at the end of the table started it all. Thank you.
And yet, science fiction, some of it is optimism. Some of it says 250 years from now, through technology, we'll have figured it out. And yet, the time is coming, the time has come to figure it out. Yeah. It's approaching the late hour. Yes. I had an interesting talk with David Suzuki yesterday. I was in Vancouver on a show. David Suzuki is a world-renowned ecologist. And the question I was asking him was, is it too late? Has the tipping point been reached? And this is what he said. Yes, it's possible that it's now too late to save a large part of humanity. But last year, on the Fraser River in British Columbia, which is the river that carries the most salmon in the world, was down to 1/20th of the salmon run from when it was at its height. And he said to his wife, David said, has it happened? Is this now the end of the salmon? Does that mean the whole northwest of our country, America, Canada and America, is coming to an end because the salmon are a primary force in renewing life there? And it was possible. He went to bed, he said, that night when he learned that news. A year later, the salmon run was 20 times what it was. 1 million and became 20 million the next year. Nobody knows why, nobody knows how, and instead of losing hope, that salmon run suggested that there are mysteries and things in nature that will surprise us. But that doesn't let us off the hook. We need to act and act fast.
No kidding.
Well said, sir. Jeri, when you were playing Seven of Nine, it was always a question of whether you assimilate into the crew or you let your freak flag fly as a Borg. And right now, there's so many things happening that we all could use a little height in our freak flag.
I agree.
That's how we're going to find each other. The freaks have to
agree.
unite because the freaks are who are going to save the planet. And we're all freaks here. So let's
Fly
celebrate
the
our freaks.
flags.